On the Grow website. Will it be on you? Is it going to be on afterwards as well? Is it? Okay. Fuck.
Live camera, my friend. Hola, hola, hola.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Tengo que practicar mi español. Es mucho tiempo que no hablo español y tengo que practicar. Ni sé cómo hablar de arbolitos en español. Well, yeah.
¿Dónde está mi micrófono? Bien.
Y después le cambio el cable y le mando ahí. ¿Querés que traiga un activo y lo pongo acá?
Can you do me a quick favor? Can you do me a quick favor and just Google what year this book was printed in?
Was it 1950? Hello. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming and joining today. Welcome to Flora by Sense. That one before was also Erratic, playing on the decks. For the night, we're going to have now a book reading by Marcelo White. Yeah. And then we're going to have more DJs, Lamb Sage. And then from 10 p.m., we're going to have live performances until the end of the night. Hope you enjoy and yeah, have a good time.
So I'm an arborist. I'm a trading arborist born in Hackney, and this book has become very special to me. It's quite a rare book. I tried looking for it for like this last 2 years basically, and someone who I told that I was looking for it on the week of my birthday actually found it in a charity shop, and so therefore got it for me. And I sort of feel like this book has found me in a way at the right time of my life, that can really understand it and really appreciate it, what it means. And to everyone who knows about trees or has respect for trees and the significance it has. It's called The Man Who Planted Trees. It's a French book from 1953. There is a animation as well that you can get. It's basically the book reading with like some nice animated pictures to go with it. And please just pardon my French because I can't speak French or pronounce it at all. So apart from that, please just enjoy. So, about 40 years ago, I went on a long journey, on foot, through the uplands, utterly unknown to tourists, the ancient region where the Alps extends into Provence. The area is bounded in the southeast and the south by the middle reaches of the river Durance, between Sisteron and Maribou, in the north by the upper course of Drôme, from its source down as far as Daille, and in the west by the plains, the Commandant, Venassin, and the foothills of Mont Ventoux. It includes all the northern part of the department of Blases Alpes, the south of the Drôme, and a small enclave of the Vaucluse. When I went on my long tramp through the deserted region, between 1,200 and 1,300 meters above sea level, it was an experience of bare, monotonous moorland. All that grew there was wild lavender. I set out to cross the area at its widest points, and after walking for 3 days, found myself in a landscape of unparalleled desolation. I camped near the skeleton of a deserted village. I hadn't had any water since the previous day, and had to find some. Although the houses, huddled together there like old wasps' nests, were in ruins, they made me think of what once had been a spring or a well nearby. And indeed there was a spring, but it had dried up. The 5 or 6 roofless houses, weathered away by the wind and the rain, and the little chapel with its fallen tower, were arranged like houses and churches in living villages, but in them no life remained. It was a fine day in June, very sunny, but on those bare heights, open to the sky, the wind blew cruelly. The sound of it raging through the carcasses of the houses was like a snarl of the wild beast disturbed over its prey. I had to move on. But after walking for 5 hours, I still hadn't found water. There was nothing to suggest I was going to. Everywhere the same dry land, the same tough grass. I thought I could see a little black figure standing upright in the distance. I took it for the trunk of a solitary tree, but on the off chance I set out towards it. It was a shepherd. 30 or so sheep lay resting on the baking earth nearby. He gave me a drink from his flask, and then, a little while later, took me to his fold, which was hidden in a hollow. He had got his water, which was delicious, from a very deep natural well, over which he had rigged a rudimentary windlass. He said very little. This is common in people who live alone, but you could tell he was sure of himself and confident in his self-possession, which was surprising in such a dismal spot. The place he lived in was not a hut, but a real house, built of stone. You could see where he'd patched up the ruin it must have been before. The roof was strong and kept out the rain. The wind in the tiles made a sound like the sea on the shore. Inside the house was tidy. The washing up done, the floor swept, the shepherd's gun cleaned and oiled. His soup was cooking over the fire. I noticed now that he was freshly shaved, that all his buttons were sewn on firmly, and that his clothes were mended in such a minute care the repairs were almost invisible. He insisted I should share his soup, and afterwards, when I offered him my tobacco pouch, he said he didn't smoke. His dog, as silent as he, was friendly without fawning. It had been agreed from the outset that I'd spend the night there. The nearest village was still more than half a day's walk away. Moreover, I knew what they were like. The rare villages one did come across in this part of the world. There were 4 or 5 sparsely scattered over these slopes, buried in thickets of holm oak where unusable roads petered out. The villages were inhabited by charcoal burners. Life is hard there. Families crowded together in a climate of as harsh in summer as in winter. See the conflicting egoisms. Ambitions swell to wild proportions among them. So desperate and unrelenting is the desire to escape. The men drive their vans into town with their charcoal and then drive back again. Even the stoutest character goes to pieces under the continual contrast. The women stay at home and nurse grudges. Everything is subject to unrelenting concentration and rivalry. For the selling of charcoal to a few in the church, from separate to competing vices, to the general mixture of vice and virtue. Never any rest. And on top of all of that, the equally unrelenting wind frays everyone's nerves. There are epidemics of suicide and many cases of madness, usually homicidal. The shepherd, who did not smoke, went and fetched a little bag and emptied a pile of acorns onto the table. Then he began to inspect them closely, separating the good from the bad. I smoked my pipe. I offered to help. He said he had to do it himself. And seeing how carefully he worked, I didn't insist. That was all the conversation we had. And when he'd collected a large enough heap of good acorns, he divided them up into groups of 10. As he did so, he discarded those that were too small or had a tiny split. He examined them minutely. Once he had sorted out 100 perfect acorns, he stopped and went to bed. It was peaceful to be in his company, and the next morning I asked if I might stay all day and rest. He found this quite natural, or rather, he gave me the impression that nothing disturbed him. I didn't absolutely need to rest, but I was intrigued and wanted to know more. He let his flock out to the fold and let them to pasture. Before leaving home, he took a little bag in which he'd put the carefully chosen and counted acorns and dipped them in a bucket of water. I had noticed that instead of a stick, he carried a steel rod, as thick as a man's thumb, and about 1.5 meters long. I followed the path parallel to his, strolling along like someone taking it easy. He took his sheep to a hollow and left them there to graze, guarded by his dog. Then he came up to where I was standing. I was afraid he was going to object to my intrusion, but not at all. He had to come this way anyhow, and invited me to go with him if I had nothing better to do. When he reached the place he was aiming for, he began making holes in the ground with his rod, putting an acorn in each and covering it up again. He was planting oak trees. I asked him if the land was his. He said it wasn't. Did he know who the owner was? No, he didn't. He thought it must be common land, or perhaps it belonged to people who weren't interested in it. He wasn't interested in who they were, and so with great care he planted his 100 acorns. After the midday meal, he started sorting out more acorns to sow. I must have been very pressing with my questions, because he answered them. He'd been planting trees in the wilderness for 3 years. He'd planted 100,000 of them. Out of those, 20,000 had come up. Out of those 20,000, he expected to lose half because of rodents and the unpredictable ways of Provence. That still meant 10,000 oaks would grow where there had been nothing. It was at this point I wondered how old he was. He was obviously over 50. 55, he said. His name was Elzard Bouffier. He had once owned a farm on the plains. It was there where he lived his life. But he had lost his first and only son, then his wife. After that he came here to be alone, enjoying an unhurtled existence with his sheep and his dog. But it struck him that this part of the country was dying for lack of trees, and having nothing much else to do, he decided to put things right. As I myself, despite my youth, was leading a solitary life at the time, I was able to sympathise with others like me and deal tactfully with these sensibilities. But I made one mistake with him. Because I was young, I naturally thought of the future in terms of myself. I assumed everyone sought the same happiness. So I remarked how magnificent his 10,000 oaks would be in 30 years' time. He answered quite simply that, if God spared him, he'd have planted so many other trees in those 30 years, the 10,000 would just be a drop in the ocean. He was already studying the reproduction of beeches, and close to the house was a nursery of saplings grown from beech nuts. He'd put up a fence to protect them from his sheep, and they were already fine specimens. He was also thinking of birches for low-lying spots, where according to him, there was a certain amount of humidity a few meters below the surface. We parted the following morning. The year after that, in 1914, war broke out, and I was in the army for 5 years. As an infantryman, I hadn't much time to think about trees. And to tell the truth, the episode hadn't affected me that much, and I thought of oaks as a hobby, like stamp collecting, so I forgot about them. When the 1914 war was over, I found myself with a small amount of D-mob money and a great desire to breathe some fresh air. So with no other purpose but that, I set out again for the same deserted landscapes as before. The country itself hadn't changed, but when I got beyond the dead village, I could see in the distance a kind of grey mist covering the hills like a carpet. Since the previous evening, I'd started thinking about the tree planting shepherd again. 10,000 oaks take up a lot of room, I reflected. I'd seen so many people die in the last 5 years, I could easily imagine that Elzard Bouffier must have been dead too. The more so as when you're 20, men of 50 seem like old codgers with one foot in the grave. But he wasn't dead. On the contrary, he was very still spry. He had adopted a different calling. There were only 4 ewes left, but now he had about 100 beehives. He'd got rid of the sheep because they were a threat to his trees. For as he told me, as I could see myself, he had taken no notice of the war and had gone on in perpetually planting trees. By this time in 1910, the 1910 oaks were 10 years old and taller than both him and me. They were an impressive sight. I was left literally speechless, and he didn't speak either. We spent the whole day walking silently through his forest. It was in 3 sections and measured 11 kilometers across at its widest point. When you remembered that it had all emerged from the hands of one spirit of this one man, without any technical aids, you saw that men could be as efficient as God in other things beside destruction. He stuck to all his plans. It was evident from the beech trees that came up to my shoulder and stretched as far as the eye could see. The oaks were thick and dense, and past the age of being at the mercy of rodents. As for Provence and its powers of destruction, it would have taken a hurricane now to undo the shepherd's creation. He showed me some beautiful birch plantations dating back 5 years ago, 1915, where I was fighting at Vedran. He'd put them all in the low-lying spots where he had rightly suspected there was slight dampness beneath the surface of the soil. They were fresh and tender as youths, and full of the will to live. There seemed to be a sort of chain reaction in all this creation, but Elzard Bouffier didn't trouble about that. He just went stubbornly on with his task, simple and natural as ever. But going back down through the village, I saw there was water flowing in the streams, and that had been dry long ago as anyone could remember. As chain reactions go, this was the most remarkable one I'd ever seen. The last time those brooks had flowed, it was in very ancient times. Some of the dreary villages I mentioned at the beginning of this story were built on sites of old Gallo-Roman villages, of which the traces still remained. Archaeologists had dug up fish hooks there. In the 20th century, storage tanks were the only source of water. Seeds were carried on the wind too. So as the water reappeared, so did the willows, reeds, meadows, gardens, flowers, and some reason for living. But the change came about so slowly, people got used to it and took it for granted. Hunters coming up onto the lonely places after hares and wild boar had noticed lots of young saplings, but they put it down to the whim of nature. That was why no one interfered with what the shepherd had done. If they'd suspected what he was up to, they'd have tried to stop him. But no one did suspect it. How could anyone? Whether in the villages or the government offices, they had imagined such perseverance, such magnificent generosity. From 1920 on, I never let a year go by without paying Elzard Bouffier a visit. I never saw him weaken or doubt. And yet, God knows, God himself gave him cause too. I never counted up the setbacks and disappointments he met with. But inevitably, so great an achievement must have passed to surmount some adversity, and such a passion couldn't have won through some sort of struggles against despair. He spent a year planting over 10,000 maples. They all died. The following year he dropped the maples and went back to beeches, which turned out to be even more successful than the oaks. One cannot properly appreciate this rare character unless one remembers that he accomplished what he did in complete solitude. So complete was his isolation, towards the end of his life he got out of the habit of speaking. Or did he no longer see any need for speech? In 1933, he had a visit from a shocked forest warden who told him he mustn't light fires outdoors in case he endangered the natural forest. This was the first time ever. He replied the simple shepherd that the forest had sprung up of its own accord. By this time, he'd taken to going and planting beech trees 12 kilometers away from where he lived. To save himself having to go home every night, he was 75 by now, he decided he would build a stone hut amongst the young trees. He built it the following year. In 1935, a government delegation came to inspect the natural forest. The visitors included a senior official from the Forestry Commission, a member of Parliament, and several technicians. There was much empty talk. It was decided that something must be done, but fortunately, nothing was done. Except for one useful measure, the forest was placed under the protection of the state, and charcoal burning was forbidden there, for it was impossible not to be overwhelmed by the beauty of those young and healthy trees. Even the Member of Parliament was entranced. One of the senior forest wardens in the delegation was a friend of mine. I explained the mystery to him, and one day during the following week we set out together to see Elzad Boufier. We found him hard at work 20 kilometers away from the delegation, from where the delegation had been carried out their inspections. The senior warden wasn't my friend for nothing. He knew what was what. He didn't say anything. I handed over a few eggs that I'd bought as a present. We divided our provisions into 3. As we ate, and for some time after, we just gazed silently at the landscape. In the direction we'd come from, the land was covered in trees, between 6 and 7 meters high. I recalled what it looked like in 1913, a wilderness. Peaceful and regular work, a frugal way of life, the bracing air of the uplands, and above all, his tranquility of mind. All these had given the old man an utmost awesome good health. He was an athlete of God. I wondered how many more hectares he was going to cover with trees. Before we left, my friend briefly and simply suggested that certain other trees might be very suitable for this terrain, though he did not press his point. After all that, he's wiser than I am, he said. Then, after my friend and I walked on for about an hour, he added, he's the wisest man in the world. He's discovered the perfect recipe for happiness. Because of my friend, not only the forest, but also our hero's happiness was protected. 3 subordinates were appointed, and bullied into such good purpose, they remained unmoved by any bribes the woodcutters might tempt them with. The tree planters' work wasn't really threatened until the 1939 war. In those days, cars were run on machines that turned wood into gas, and there was never enough wood. People started cutting down the oaks that were planted in 1910, but the trees were so far from the main roads that the businesses didn't pay and was abandoned. The shepherd didn't even know about it. He was 30 kilometers away, going on peacefully with his task, ignoring the 1939 war, just as he ignored the 1914 war. I saw Elzard Bouffier for the last time in June 1945. He was 87. I took the same route into the wilds as before, but now, although everything had been allowed to run down during the war, there was a bus service linking the valley of the Durance and the mountains. I assumed it was because I was driving through the country relatively fast that I didn't recognize the scenery I'd seen for the first time on foot. Some of the settlements we went to seemed quite new. It was only when I found out the names of the villages that I knew I was really back in a region that had once been ruined and desolate. The bus sent me down in Vergons. In 1913, this hamlet, which with its 10 or 11 houses, had 3 inhabitants. They were rough, unsociable people who hated one another and lived by trapping animals, in a state morally and physically was almost prehistoric. The empty houses around them were overrun by nettles. They lived with nothing to hope for. All they had to look forward to was death, not a situation propitious to virtue. But now all was changed, even the air. Instead of the rough and arid gusts that I had met with before, there was a soft and scented breeze. A sound like water drifted from the heights. It was the wind in the forests. But the most astonishing thing of all was the sound of water actually flowing into a basin. I saw that the people in the village had built a fountain. It was gushing forth with abundance. And this is what moved me the most. Beside it, they had planted a lime tree, which must have been about 4 years old. It was already quite sturdy, and an indisposable symbol of resurrection. Vergons showed other signs of work that was not undertaken without hope. So hope had returned. The ruins had been tidied up, crumbling walls knocked down, and 5 old houses rebuilt. The hamlet now had 28 inhabitants, including 4 young couples. The new houses were freshly rough cast and surrounded by kitchen gardens where rows of both vegetables and flowers grew. Cabbages mingled with rose bushes, leeks with snapdragons, celery with anemones. It had become a place where one would wish to live. I continued on foot. The war was only just over, and life was still restricted, but Lazarus had risen from the grave. On the lower slopes of the mountain, I could see a small field of young barley and rye. Deep in the narrow valleys, a green haze of meadows. In the 8 years between then and now, the whole region had grown healthy and prosperous. On the sites where I had only saw ruins in 1913, there were now neat, well-plastered farmhouses that speak of a happy and comfortable existence. Ancient springs fed by the rains and the snows, retained by the forests. They started flowing again, and the water from them has been carefully channeled. Nearly every farm, amid groves of maple, the basins of fountains overflow onto carpets of cool mint. Villages have been gradually rebuilt. People from the plains, where land is expensive, have come to settle here, bringing with them youth and movement and the spirit of adventure. Along the lanes and paths you meet men and women who are well fed, boys and girls who know how to laugh and have rediscovered the pleasures of old rural sports and pastimes. If you include both, the former population unrecognizable since their life became more agreeable, and the newcomers, more than 10,000 people must owe their happiness to Elzad Bufia. When I reflect on the fact that one man with only his simple physical and moral resources was able to bring forth out of the desert this land of Can, I can't help feeling the human condition in general is admirable. In spite of everything, and when I count up all the consistency, magnanimity, perseverance, and generosity it took to achieve those results, I'm filled with enormous respect for the old, uneducated peasant who was able, unaided, to carry through to successful conclusion an achievement worthy of God. Elzad Bufia died peacefully in 1947 in the hospice of Banon. So I find a lot of parallels with that and Hackney, basically. I was born in Homerton. Hackney, like, I've broken into this building before and had a party here. 27 years ago, Hackney, all of that over there was brownscape land, like beautiful wildflower area that has now been built on and had cultivated wildflowers put on it, which look very pretty, but we pay to get them watered, we pay to get them sorted out, planted. There's a whole team there's a whole like massive corporate group of gardeners called, can't remember what they're called right now, but they manage that. This book's given me great respect for the people who manage the trees of Hackney, and especially one of them who's called Rupert. He's been the tree officer in Hackney for about 12 years or something now, and his predecessor as well was really good. And these are the unsung heroes of gentrification. They have been planting trees here with no care for themselves, taking all the complaints of, why are you planting this tree? Why aren't you planting this tree? Why are you cutting that tree? Why aren't you cutting that tree? Like, all the bullshit, and they just keep on doing their job, keep getting trees in the ground. Have anyone know Wickwoods? Wickwoods was only planted 26 years ago. The reason that happened is because at the time, Hackney had an in-house team of tree surgeons, and basically when they finished work early, instead of going home, what they would do is just go to Wickwoods and literally just plot trees in the ground. Apart from all of the trees around the edges, all the big London planes and ashes, not one tree in there is older than 26. But none of you would, like, hardly anyone actually realizes that, and that it took someone being like, just put loads of trees in there. And then 20 years later, no one will notice, and we can go have parties there, we can make videos in there, do photo shoots in there, people can smile in there, have fun in there. And Hackney has taken a pledge to plant 2,000 street trees in the last 3 years, so this is the second year of the program. It's going to make a massive difference to house prices. Are going to go up. They have been going up massively, and no one really thinks about it. But someone planted a tree a long time ago, and that has added to everyone's life. Everyone should be able to see trees from their window, and it would improve everyone's well-being if they could. There you go. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Thank you to Marcelo for his amazing book reading. And thank you for your attention and for being here tonight. It's a full house. And I'd like to explain a little bit about what we're up to. So we're Sense, and this event is based on Flora. And so we've invited artists and performers and musicians to all kind of show their work and show what they're doing today. So in the mezzanine, one at a time, we will be inviting tables to view Terminal by Vitas and myself. Downstairs, just on the way to the toilet, we have a piece by Manon and Denise, which is an ice sculpture. So please go and see that. And so at 9 o'clock, we have a performance by Loose Association of Cinema and Sound. And at 10, we have a performance by Sculpture. So tune in, enjoy, take it easy, have a drink, and whatever else, and just have fun. Thank you for being here. Ciao, ciao.
all good things to all things to all good things to all good things to all good, pulling out of a bad mood, pulling out of a bad mood, all to all things to all good, all to all things to all all things to all good, pulling out of a bad mood, pulling out of a bad mood, all good things to 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 all good, pulling out of a bad mood, pulling out of a bad mood, all good things to all good things to all good, all good things to all good things to all good, all good things to all good things to all good, pulling out of a bad mood, pulling out of a bad mood, all good things to all good things to all good, all good things to all good things to all good, all good things to all good things to all good, pulling out of a bad mood, pulling out of a bad mood, all good things to all good things to all good, all good things to all good things to all good body boogie, body to body boogie, to the hottest thing in town.
until midnight, eyes closing. His voice carried everything that was to come. Tables, artificial lakes, like a movie.
Vomits into water, vomits into love, eyes watering, vomits into eye. A paradise bird, flapping its wings.
Hello, 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 hello. What? Huh? Hello, hello. Hello, hey, 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 hey. Hey, hey, hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. No, 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 no. Hey, yes. Hello. Um, thanks, Lam Sage, for playing that wonderful set. Now we're gonna move on to the. Yeah. All right, all right. Now we're moving on to the live performances. We're gonna start with the Luz Association of Cinema and Sound. At the moment, we're 4 of us here. We're gonna play. We're gonna do a live score or. Hey, better. We're gonna do a live score, so it's improvised sounds, and it's playing onto found footage. And yeah, it's gonna be like, can you hear me? Yeah, it's gonna be like 30 minutes. Then we're gonna move on to a screening of a short video, and then another live performance. So anyway, enjoy.
Hey, hey, hey. Hey. Hey, hey. So, we are the Loose Association of Cinema and Sound. We play with found footage and experimental music. And this film is called Pharmacopeia. Oui, oui, oui. Reverb. Maybe we can say something here. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, is it?
Thank you, everyone. That was the Loose Association of Cinema and Sound. Now we're gonna move on to playing a short video by Claudio Giambuso and music by Scores. This is an exploration of flora and color. It's done with natural flowers and video mapping. And the sound is very organic. You'll hear it. Enjoy. Yeah, yeah. Ooh. Yeah, nice one. So yeah, that was Claudio Giambuso and Scores with Flora. Now now we're gonna do a little setup for sculpture. They're gonna be performing with this turntable, Sotrop, and some live sound. So if you wanna get closer and see everything from, yeah, close, come over. Bye.
For over 3 decades,
So now we have, can you hear me? Sculpture. Sculpture with live sotrop and sound.
For over 3 decades, Dr. Maxwell Maltz's principles of psycho-cybernetics have inspired and enhanced the lives of more than 30 million people throughout the world. Dr. Maltz invented a simple step-by-step program that will help you develop a dynamic self-image through new positive affirmations of empowerment and action. Psycho-cybernetics is the first science of human development, a system of knowledge that will show you how to make accurate, predictable changes in how you think, how you respond to life situations, and inevitably increase the amount of success and enjoyment you get out of life. Psycho-cybernetics moved human development out of the realm of wishing, hoping, and undependable techniques into the realm of predictable, positive results. Psycho-cybernetics works at a fundamental level, and the changes it produces affect all areas of your life. As you listen to this program and do the exercises in your guidebook, you can expect to build a strong, positive self-image that expresses the real you, the best you. You'll be able to set clear goals and achieve them regularly. You'll become more productive and successful financially and in your career. Psycho-cybernetics will show you how to relax and stay focused no matter what the situation. You'll also learn how to improve your relationships with everyone and feel a sense of overall satisfaction, fulfillment, and peace as you bring out the best of yourself each day. Together with the audio program, the video, your guidebook, and along with the key point reminder cards and cue word cards designed for positive reinforcement, you now possess a powerful set of tools for the ability to implement any strategies necessary for unlimited success and live a life without limits. And now, to get us started, here's Mr. Dan.
Woo! Give it up for Sculpture! Woo! That was Dan and Ruben from Sculpture. Thank you very much for everyone for coming. This was Sense, Flora. Thanks to all the artists, thanks to everyone, and yeah, this is the end of the night, so sadly we have to pack up. We can stay hanging around and finish our drinks, but yeah, we won't have any music playing on. But yeah, thank you very much. First time we do one live event in a while, so woo!